What walks behind the tree line? Dale Whitfield's cabin sat at the edge of 600 acres of national forest in northern Montana, close enough to hunting season traffic to feel safe. Far enough from town that help was 40 minutes out. He'd lived there 11 years without a single bad night. That changed in October, the week the elk started screaming, not bugling, screaming. He heard it the first time just after dusk. It was a sound too raw and too human to belong to any animal he knew, coming from somewhere past the tree line behind his property. He grabbed his rifle and stood on the porch until it stopped. When it started again 20 minutes later, closer, he went inside. He locked the door for the first time since he had moved in. The next morning, he found tracks in the frost near his woodpile. Deer like cloven, except they were arranged wrong. They were spaced the way a man's stride would fall, not an animal's gait. He told himself a moose had wandered through. It had walked strangely on the uneven ground. He almost believed it. That night, something knocked on his cabin door. 2 knocks, evenly spaced, deliberate, the kind of knock a neighbor makes. Dale looked through the window and saw nothing. No truck in the drive, no shape on the porch. He didn't open the door. The knocking came again an hour later. This time a voice followed it. It was his brother's voice, calling him by the nickname only their late father had used. Dale, open up. Truck broke down 2 miles back. It's freezing out here. His brother lived 3 states away. Dale knew that. He also knew with a cold certainty that had nothing to do with logic. If he opened that door, whatever was standing on the other side would not be his brother's face waiting for him. He'd grown up hearing stories from an old man who worked the ranch 2 properties over. Stories about something that walked the tree lines at the edge of settled land. Something that could take the shape and voice of people you loved. It mimicked to get invited in, because it could not cross a threshold uninvited. The old man had called it a lot of things over the years, never the same name twice. He'd always ended the story the same way, though. If it sounds like someone you know, it already knows you're listening. Don't answer. Don't confirm you're there. Dale sat with his back against the door and his rifle across his knees. He did not answer. The voice tried 3 more names that night. His mother's, a woman he used to date. And finally, worst of all, his own pleading with itself to be let in from the cold. Each time he said nothing. Sometime near 4 a.m., something long and pale passed the window. It was 2 tall joints bending at angles that made his stomach turn. It moved on all 4s one moment and upright the next. It was like it hadn't fully decided what shape suited the night. It paused outside the glass. He didn't breathe. It moved on. By morning, the woods were silent. The strange tracks near the woodpile had multiplied overnight. They circled the cabin twice before heading back into the trees. They never once crossed the salt Dale had poured across every windowsill and doorframe before sunrise. He had poured the salt in a fit of half-remembered folklore. He never found out if it was the salt, the silence, or simply that it had lost interest. But it never came back. He sold the cabin that spring. The realtor asked why. He gave the answer people always give when the truth sounds insane. Just time for a change. The buyers moved in that summer. Dale doesn't know if the screaming started again for them. He's never gone back to ask. But sometimes late at night, hundreds of miles from those woods, he still hears 2 knocks, evenly spaced, deliberate, and a voice that sounds almost but not quite like someone he loves asking to be let in. He still doesn't answer. The 3rd floor hallway. Renata Cole took the night shift at St. Bartholomew's because it paid better and asked fewer questions. 6 months in, she'd stopped flinching at code blues and stopped jumping at the hospital's usual groans. Old pipes, old floors, old building settling into itself. Except for the 3rd floor. The east wing had been closed for renovation for over a year, sealed behind plastic sheeting and a door that was supposed to be locked. Nobody worked up there. Nobody was supposed to be up there. She heard footsteps from it anyway, slow, even deliberate pacing the length of the hallway above the nurse's station every night around 3 a.m. She mentioned it once to a coworker who just shrugged. Building settles. Every night? Same time? Same pattern? The coworker didn't have an answer for that. One night, curiosity beat her better judgment. She took the stairwell up during a lull badge in hand and found the 3rd floor door unlocked, which it never was. The plastic sheeting inside had been pulled back in one long section, like something had walked through it recently and left it hanging. The hallway beyond was dark, stripped to studs and concrete exactly as construction had left it. Except for one thing. Down at the far end, past where the emergency lighting gave out, stood a hospital bed. Made up, sheets pulled tight, pillow fluffed like a room ready for a patient who hadn't been assigned yet. There was no reason for a bed to be up there. Construction crews didn't leave furniture behind. She took 2 steps toward it before the temperature dropped hard enough to fog her breath. A voice, flat-layered wrong, said from somewhere behind her close to her ear despite the empty hallway. "You're early." She didn't run. She'd read enough, worked enough night shifts in enough old buildings to know that whatever this was fed on panic as much as anything else. She backed toward the stairwell door at a measured pace, eyes on the bed the whole time. The sheets on it were moving now, not blowing, not settling, but shifting like someone underneath was rolling over. Slow, unhurried, and no rush at all because it already knew she couldn't outrun a hallway that didn't want to let her go. She made it to the door. It didn't follow. She filed an incident report the next morning. Maintenance found the 3rd floor door locked exactly as it should have been. No sign of forced entry, no bed, no disturbed plastic sheeting. Her supervisor suggested she was overtired. She didn't argue. She just requested a transfer to days. The footsteps still walk that hallway at 3 a.m., according to whoever works nights now. Renata knows this because she still gets texts from her old coworkers every few months, always the same question. "Did you ever go up there?" She always says no. Colton Reyes grew up on a cattle ranch outside a town in northern Arizona, too small to appear on most maps. It was country the older Navajo families around them spoke about carefully in low voices. They always gave the same warning. Don't travel the back roads alone after dark, and if something calls your name from the brush, don't answer twice. He hadn't thought much about it in years, until the night his truck's headlights caught something standing in the middle of the ranch road. It stood upright on 2 legs, watching him with an animal's stillness. It was in a shape that was almost, but not quite human. He slowed instead of stopping. That much he remembered clearly later when he tried to explain it to anyone who'd listen. Its head turned to track him as he passed. Its joints bent at an angle no spine should allow. For one unbearable second, its face was neither animal nor human, but something caught between the two. Its skin was pulled too tight over the wrong bones. Then it was gone. It moved off into the brush faster than anything that size should move. He didn't tell his father until the following week. That was when the cattle started turning up dead. Not mauled, not eaten, just dead. They were laid out neat in a line along the fence like something had arranged them that way on purpose. His father's face went gray. He'd seen this before, he said decades back. He told Colton the same warnings his own father had told him. It can wear the shape of someone you trust. It can call to you in the voice of family. Never respond by name. Never look it directly in the eye for more than a second. And if you ever find yourself alone with it, watching from the tree line, walk backward. Never turn your back, and never under any circumstances run. That knowledge got tested 3 nights later. Colton was checking a stretch of fence near dusk. He heard his mother calling his name from somewhere past the ridgeline. Except his mother was 2 miles away at the house. On the second call, the voice cracked in a way hers never had. It dropped half an octave into something that no longer bothered pretending. He didn't answer. He backed toward his truck at a slow, even pace, eyes forward, watching the ridge the entire time. Something moved along it, keeping pace with him. It was low to the ground one moment and upright the next. It seemed not to have settled on which shape suited the encounter. It never crossed the fence line, his father had told him once offhand. Whatever boundary rules it followed, fences and thresholds, seemed to matter to it. Nobody living really understood why. They only knew that it was one of the few things that reliably held. He made it to the truck and didn't look back again until he was moving. Tires kicked up dust on the ranch road. Headlights carved a narrow tunnel through the dark. The cattle death stopped after that season. Nobody ever explained why, and nobody asked too hard. Asking too hard, his father always said, was its own kind of invitation. Colton still works that ranch. He still drives those back roads at night when he has to. But he keeps the windows up. He keeps the radio off. If anything ever calls his name from the dark again, he already knows better than to answer. The Interstate Motel. Priya Anand took room 114 at a motel off I-80 in rural Nebraska, because it was the only place still open past midnight. Her eyes wouldn't stay open another mile. The clerk barely looked up when he handed her the key, just muttered, "Don't mind the noise from next door. Pipes." She should have asked more questions. She didn't. Around 1 a.m., something woke her. Not a sound exactly, more a pressure like the air in the room had thickened. Then came the knock, soft from the connecting door between 114 and 116, a door with no handle on her side, painted shut, clearly unused for years. She lay still. The knock came again, followed by a voice muffled through the wood, a man's voice, calm, almost apologetic. "Sorry to bother you. Left my key inside. Could you let me through?" Room's freezing. There was no reason for a locked, painted shut door to have anyone behind it. She knew that, even half asleep, even with her heart hammering. She reached for her phone instead of the door and pulled up the motel's reviews. She scrolled with shaking thumbs until she found what she was looking for, buried 3 pages deep. Other guests over several years described the exact same thing. A voice at that same connecting door, always polite, always reasonable sounding, always asking to be let through. One review posted 8 months earlier simply said, "My sister opened it. Don't stay in 114. There was no follow-up review from that account ever again. The voice kept talking, patient and unhurried. It shifted tactics. First, a stranded traveler. Then worse, a voice that sounded uncannily like her own father asking why she wouldn't help a man in the cold. She put in earbuds, turned music up loud enough to drown it out, and sat upright against the headboard until the gray light of dawn came through the curtains. She checked out at first light without showering, without making the bed, and told the clerk on her way out what she'd heard. He didn't look surprised. He just said in the same flat tone he'd used the night before, "Room 116's been empty for 6 years. When she asked why the door was never removed entirely, he only shrugged. Some things you just seal up and hope they stay sealed. She drove the rest of her trip without stopping to sleep again, running on gas station coffee and nerve, and never took that stretch of I-80 after dark again. Months later, scrolling out of habit, she checked the motel's listing once more. Room 114 had a new review posted the week before from a stranger she'd never meet. Heard something asking to come in through a door with no handle. Didn't open it. Don't know what would have happened if I had. She closed the app and didn't look again.